This chapter is going to cover how to get organized with your maps and with your site image mosaics. If you fish on one lake and you don't make a lot of recordings, then this chapter is probably not for you. I fish a lot of lakes. I've been making site image recordings since I got my Humminbird 1197 in February of 2009, so I literally have hundreds and hundreds of recordings. I felt that it was always important to do that. The way to organize this logically to me on my computer is to create folders for each lake I have. The next logical partition I have is to make folders for different areas of the lake. I do this in a logical way so that it's easier to organize recordings. For example, the Dow Rock Fishing Pier is an area, a little cove so to speak, where they used to have lots of fishing piers, and they're all gone now, but the structure underwater is still there. So I have all the recordings that I've made for that particular area under this one folder. And so I do this so it's easier to deal with the different recordings when I make either a map or whether I make a site image mosaic map. I only have a small number of recordings in this one folder, the Dow Rock Fishing Pier we were just talking about. So that's an easy one to figure out because I can load these up very quickly and see what I've got. However, if I go back to another one, if I go to Lake Amistad and just look at our recordings, I've got that all lumped together right now. So that is very unmanageable to me. And how do you know what area of the lake you're at? How do you know how these relate to one another? It could be that you have recordings for one cove up here, and then later, months later or years later, you made recordings down here. So this is very hard to work with. So I prefer to make my folders small and meaningful. To further aid in my organization, I can even change the icons of these folders, and I have different icons that mean different things to me. For instance, if I have a check mark, that means I have gone through and I have done everything I need to do. I have created my ACI file. I've created my site image files, and everything is done. It's edited. It's just the way I want it to look. The ones with the clock on them, those are ones I have work to do on. And it could be that this weekend I went out and made some recordings and I have moved them from my record folder into this, and that's telling me I need to work on these. And that just helps me stay organized. Finally, in my subfolder for the area of the lake, I'll have an AC folder, a record, and an SI folder. Of course, the record is where all of my brand new recordings will be stored. Then as I process them, I'll put them in one or both of these folders. And for instance, let's say if I had a recording where I did a lot of turns and things of that nature, I was just idling over some structure. Well, that might be suited for the AC folder where I can create a map from it. But it would not be suited for a site image mosaic. On the other hand, if I made long, straight recordings, those would be great for my site images, but they might not be good for my AutoChart maps. So you can put your file in the folder that is best suited, and if you have one that will work for both, you can put it in both places. Generally, though, when I have a recording like that, I'll cut out the pieces that I don't need or don't want in the site image, and then just store that file in the SI. We're now going to look at index files, both for the AutoChart maps and for the site image mosaics, ACD files and SII files. Well, here's how we get organized in AutoChart. I can do the same kind of logic in AutoChart that I can do with my folders on my PC. I'm going to use a little different mechanism though. Humminbird has something called a chart index, and we have a file index manager here. I'm going to click on this icon, and I'm going to open the default chart index. And what that is depending on how you set up your system, all of your recordings that you import will be put into this chart index. It's the default one. But as you can see, we have lots and lots of recordings for just this one lake, and considering all the lakes that I have, this would become very unmanageable very quickly. So I'm going to do something a little different here. I create these ACI files, the chart index files, and I do them by pieces of the lake. For instance, like I'm gonna double click on the red barn area here. There's a small number of recordings, and they're just for this one little area, just like the subfolders I had on my PC. And so I'm going to load these up. So I'm going to select map here, and this is a little area that I call the red barn area on my lake because there's a great big red barn up here and it makes it easy to identify. I'm going to open the ACI file. So I will click on red barn and I'll click open. It tells me the scan base is already active. Yes, I want to proceed. So it only showed the recordings that I had in that chart index for this area. Notice that all the other recordings are gone now. I loaded the red barn ACI file back, and these are the recordings that are contained in that index. And if I will look in my folder that this looks at, these are the files. And so there's a one-to-one relationship between what's listed here and what's in my file. However, I'm going to back up one directory, and I'm going to go to my record directory. So these might be newer files that I brought in, or they could be files that I really don't want to be in the ACI file. And so that's one thing that's different when you use the ACI files versus just using the normal ACD files where you load all your recordings in. This you can be specific. I can say I want these recordings only and leave out ones I don't want. And so that's a nice little feature that if you use chart indexes you can do that. Once again, let me close that out. If I will zoom in on this, it just shows the recordings in that file index, and everything else around in my grid is gone. Now if I do a new, everything comes back. I can map here, and it's going to show me all of that. Maybe I don't want to see all of this information up here. Maybe there are some recordings here, specifically the ones with the red dots. If you guys remember what the red dots are for, that was me being on plane. And so I don't want those kind of recordings in my chart. So this is a good way to eliminate them. Here's a good example of how you can segregate a lake. This is a rather small lake, but I decided to break it up, and I can fit most of my recordings into each one of these areas and name them something simple like A1, A2, A3, or I can say upper end of the lake, left side, right side, the dam area, the southeast area. Name them in a way that's meaningful to you, but it really helps to be able to segregate and keep the number of recordings in a folder to a minimum. Let's investigate the .sii files, or the side image file index. If you'll remember, we just showed you about the ACI files for the chart. Now we're looking at the side image, so there are two different entities. There are a couple of noticeable differences though, and I'll talk about that. When you open this up, if you remember with the chart index we had a default, and we do not have that with the side image, so we need to either create one or open an existing one. So I'm going to open an existing file index, and I'm going to pick one from the lake that we're looking at. And if you'll notice, I have my side image indexes that kind of correspond to the way I had my folders for the different areas of the lake. So I can load in a particular area and not be bogged down by waiting for the system to do a lot of work that maybe it doesn't need to. So I'm going to pick one out. Let's just go down to, let's look at the fishing pier. So I'm going to open that side image index. These are the files. What you can do is you can add more files to your index if you want to. You can remove files if you want, and something else that's important is you can move them up and down. I'm going to close this out, And now I'm going to open one. So I'm going to move us up here, and I'm going to go to the map here. And if you'll remember, this is where the Dell Rock Fishing Pier is. So now I'm going to open. And now I'm going to open, rather than a .dat file, I'm going to open a chart index file, so an SII file. Now I'm going to scroll through my list of options. And here's the Dell Rock Fishing Pier. So I'll double click on that, and there. It pulled in all of the recordings, and it pulled them in the order I want them to appear. So you can generate some pretty nice looking recordings by doing this. Let's show you how to customize your map. I'm going to open up the SI index for a particular area of the lake, Miller Road North. And that is the map that I have just drawn here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a change to this. And I am going to make this recording here, and part of it is hidden. I'm going to put that on top of this one. And so I'm just going to show you how to do that. So I come down here, and recording 255, there is a left side and a right side. And so I want to put 260 above 255. So I'm going to click on 260, and I'm going to move up. So I have moved 260 up above 255. So I've got my left channel. Now I move my right channel up. Okay, so I've done that. I'm going to save it. Now I'm going to redraw this map, and let's see what this looks like. Now this is over the top of the other one, and I think you have a better picture. Further, I'm just going to take this one out altogether because it's got a curly area here at the end. So I'm just going to open that up. And that is recording 255, I believe. No, it's 260. So I'm going to remove that. Click out of this. Okay, so that cleaned it up, made the map look a little better. That's something you can do with this. I'll even show you one other thing. Load up your SII file. And I'm just going to go down to that one recording we were working with. And I'm going to take out one side. So I'm going to remove it. So for 255, there's only one side. Everything else has two sides. One more time. Gonna load that in. It only did one side of the recording. That's how you can go through and you can make some good looking mosaic overlays with your AutoChart Pro. Say for instance, if I was going this way and then I turned around and came back the other way and I overlapped a little bit, and perhaps one map had a better image than the other, so I could place one on top of the other. So that's why this is very important, and that's one of the differences between the SII index and the chart index.